So like Eurovision, we're going to share host duties. Hi, my name's James Douthwaite. We'd like to welcome you all to the first talk of this series. We would, of course, like to especially welcome our first speaker, Tolulope Onabolu, whom Roslyn will introduce properly in a minute. I just wanted to take a few minutes to introduce our series and explain a little bit about what it is we want to achieve by it. So as most of you know, the series is tied to the research group on academic forms, which is convened by Fabio Durao and Tim Lansendorfer. And like the research group, this series is intended to take stock of the forms of academic life, from traditional models like the lecture and the monograph to those less recognized but just as crucial formats like the coffee break or the office hour. The idea is not necessarily to critique or to bemoan. In fact, many of us are quite happy to defend traditional academic forms, but rather to assess the ways in which we practice, to steal a line from Dylan Thomas, our craft or sullen art. What are the enduring forms of academic life? What are the forms of the academic life to come? What are the unacknowledged, unhistoric acts of academic life? What do we owe? And to lend further intellectual weight by borrowing a line from George Eliot, to academics who led faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs. What is good and what can be improved? This series is organized under the aegis of the Rhine-Main University Alliance, specifically by the Goethe University Frankfurt and the Johannes Gutenberg University Mainz, and is generously sponsored through their research initiative funds. From the Goethe University, the series is organized by Tim Lansendorfer and James Douthwaite, i.e. me, Roslyn Irving and Torsten Kafka from Mainz. We will have a series of online lectures and in-person workshops around the topics mentioned above, taking in academic forms of the past, the present and the future. Our purpose is to have a range of expert perspective on how the forms of academic life function, why they function so, and how we might have to change our perspective on them, and how we might not have to. In terms of our audience, we hope to be as broad as possible. We want to be open to students who might never have considered the question of why they are introduced to the styles of communication and research they encounter at university. But we also want to attract graduates and staff members for whom these forms have become such a staple of work life that they pass by unremarked or unchallenged. We initially thought about framing the lecture series as a duality, beginning with more traditional forms in this winter semester before moving on to new and innovative forms in the summer term of 2026. However, the best organisers are pragmatists, and so when the gods of scheduling plan to upset us mere mortals, we have responded with a more pragmatist format. After all, the new and the traditional must always sit beside one another, constituting one another, meaning that time loses all meaning in such considerations anyway. And so we are delighted to start not with Aristotle's Poetics, but with the form of the website.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for logging on to what is the inaugural session of our series on the futures of the humanities. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Tolulope Onabolu from the University of Newcastle to begin our lectures. Tolu sent me a rather too modest bio, so you will have to bear with me as I add a few extra words of the brief précis that he provided. Tolu is a lecturer in architecture with an interest in spatial theories, scenography, and experimental and emerging technologies. His work is decidedly transdisciplinary and at the cutting edge. And I've had the pleasure of previewing and editing elements of his new research project on disease, desire, and delirium in narratives and colonial spaces of the coast of West Africa, on which he will present a lecture in November in Ghent. In relation to the talk he will give today on the ways websites might be employed by academics as a site for creative practice, a pedagogical tool, and as spaces that allow for expansion outside of more traditional forms, Tolu will be sharing his insights from the website he developed in relation to his research on the Deleuzian time image, critical geography, sampling, and sound design. This platform has seen him experiment with inscriptive and generative practices, including AI in experimental architecture. Please join me in welcoming Tolu.
Thanks, Rosie. Thanks, James and Tim. No pressure on me. Okay. Um, okay, so this is going to take the form of a talk. So it's not a lecture. Let me just get that one out there first. And I will try to explain what I've done or why I've done it in the way I've done it, and perhaps maybe what inspired it. So this the site is called Unfamiliar Bodies, and it captures a direction in my work where I'm looking at the uncanny, and a couple of issues around the uncanny. How do we discuss it? Um, it was also an invitation to students to work on the project with me. So I have some undergraduate students working on certain dissertation topics, looking at the work of Anthony Vidler and the architecture of the uncanny. And I wanted to do some other elements of creative practice on the topic. Where now I suppose what caused the website was a call for a performance or a call for papers, and in that call there was a question on there was a point where it says, where we're filling the form, it says enter the URL to your website. I'm like, hang on, I don't have a website, but I did want to make a website, so I'm going to do the website. I've done some of this kind of web stuff before in the past, so it wasn't particularly difficult. I thought. I had also used the format for teaching when I was at the University of Edinburgh during the COVID lockdown. So I was like, okay, I'll get my hands dirty again and get this stuff done. And what it became quite useful for, it's not a website in the form of I have a lot of information to share, but it's more a website in the form of here's a repository of curated material which I've worked on and which I will be updating as time goes on, because it's not nothing, even though it might never be published or it might never be disseminated in any other format. So, and I think with that, I will get to it. So what I did to get going was I developed a series of headings, the unfamiliar, speaking to the issue of the site, machinic imaginaries, cinematic imaginaries, and a blog. The blog is, so the unfamiliar is empty because that is where I suppose, work, when it begins to evolve, will go. But all of the various explorations, whether in the form of undone papers or presented papers, sit in here. So if I click on machinic imaginary, what you see are a series of snippets of abstracts for papers which I've presented. This was presented in Delft, where I was looking at the work of Nick Land in the context of his reference to, what was it now, Conrad's Heart of Darkness, and I presented a sort of slight animation with it. I'd created a series of images using Midjourney, and I felt, okay, well, here's a good space for this, because I don't need to go through copyrights, or I don't need to go through any of these other things to present it there, right? And then there was a follow-on paper. So this was an architecture conference in Delft, and then the next one, I think these two are 2024. So yeah, and then the next one was another paper which was titled Capricious Imaginaries. If I just click on this, for example, you'll see what's going on. So again, it's a snippet of an abstract. It's not a full abstract, but it's a way to put out material that I've worked on that may never get any other presence, and put it here. And then there was another one which was called the Planetary Archive, which was a symposium given at Newcastle University earlier in the year. Again, same logic, snippets of stuff. They will probably never get published, and maybe they will, I don't know. One on Adolf Loos, which the development of which I'll be giving a lecture in Ghent in November. And then I think the most recent one, Nihilist Imaginaries. So again, these are all stuff that I've worked on from an imagery point of view, but also from a theoretical examining point of view. Now, if I go into, so I'll give you an example of how this transpired. So if I go into the section on, if you like, the cinematic imaginary, the first one would be this. So here's one which is video only, and it was created using Midjourney for the images and then Runway for the animation of the AI videos, and then Premiere Pro to stitch together the various images. So this was the one which was looking at Nick Land's work in connection with Gilles Deleuze and what's his name? Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And all I'm trying to do here is to say, well, Conrad does leave the shores of England, or leaves the Thames, and he proceeds on a journey to somewhere in the Congo or whatever. But the landscape he's leaving has a particular kind. It's given a particular kind of flavor. It's given it quite a Gothic flavor. He says the Romans arrived here, and when they arrived here, it would have been a dark and miserable place, and blah blah blah. So I'm trying to capture all of these using AI. Obviously, they're sketches in the sense that if this were to be made into a film, these are the ideas that would then go on into being developed. So I'm not advocating in any way that AI is a tool to be used for artistic production. I'm saying, I'm categorically saying, I think it's a great investigative tool where you can begin to test ideas and you can begin to test imagery and see what you want to create out of it. So this was the first attempt at that. The second one was the, so again, it's still following the same Deleuzian problem and still using AI as an investigative tool to sketch out an idea. In this particular case, it was looking at specifically Deleuze's take on the time image, where obviously, I mean, the problem was quite different, but the video is based on the time image. And it's this juxtaposition of images, curated images or curated videos or whatever, and a layering of sound. And so, and the point is that when you, from the point of view of the time image, when you present the material, the viewer takes what they want to take from it. So I'll play that.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize.
Can you hear it?
The transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that are to our minds as ours are to the beasts in the jungle, intellects, vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 39th year of the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment. Near the end of October, business was better. The war scare was over. More men were back at work. Sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the Crosley service estimated that 32 million people were listening in on radios.
Okay, so this again, this video, or this, I don't know what to call it. This video is a layering of Orson Welles's radio broadcast War of the Worlds. So it's a minute of it where he's literally talking about this invasion from Mars. and it's based on H.G. Wells's book, War of the Worlds. So in the early, I think it's 1930s, so when Orson Welles presented this, it was supposed to be a gimmick, whereby it was presented as if something was happening, there was an actual invasion, etc., etc. And because I was speaking to that topic of degeneration and whatnot, but from the point of view of an invasion, it felt like a good way to compose both together to deliver a sensation of something. It's a sort of Deleuzian problem of a sense of a thing as opposed to the meaning of the thing. And again, the video was sitting in a folder, and I felt, well, it'd be useful to share it somehow, and then I was like, okay, yeah, put that on the web as well. So what this is a series of writings and videos. But then something else happened with that call for submissions, which basically kicked off the web page, and it was asking for sound videos. So I then started tinkering around with sound production, and that took on its own space. So where you have, so on the web page you have this little icon there which links you to SoundCloud, and I think at the bottom as well you have the link which takes you to SoundCloud. Now on SoundCloud, again, it's the same kind of thing where it's not finished material, it's just stuff that is being worked on and feeds into other things. So if I play this, for example, can you hear it? So these are just experiments in I suppose, thematic sound, which are part of that investigation, which is looking at, the Deleuzian time image, where what kind of sounds do you want to create? What kind of moods do you want to create? So the one which was presented for the conference is not on here. I don't know if I'm going to put it. It's 3 minutes long. But if we look at another one, so this is another piece, which was essentially one of the early ones created. So again, this is another sort of one of these experiments where I'm not doing too much work. There's a plugin which I'm tinkering around with and just modulating the plugin to create a sonic environment or a sense of something. And again, it's a couple of seconds long. It may never do anything, but it's part of an exploration which then leads me to make other decisions, and it has its own home. So there are two platforms. There's the SoundCloud one, and then there's Bandcamp. And Bandcamp is weird because Bandcamp kind of puts a price tag on it. So I put, I don't know, 50p or something if you wanna listen to it or whatever. But I mean, and the interface is nicer, I think, on SoundCloud than on Bandcamp. I'm not worried about too much about the ethics of what the platform is. They're just spaces where you can table what you're investigating, and it forms an interesting way to share them. So, and then I think just on maybe the last part of it would be, where a lot of the investigations are happening. A lot of investigations on my use of AI for image making or image searching. I'm not sure what to call it. I think it's a form of both. It's both a search and an instruction, because you have to issue these prompts. So if I go into so for example, I mean, this is a pretty swanky image, but it doesn't exist on its own, right? It's part of a long series of investigations which started in 2023. So I'll close the. I'll just show how this works. So if I go to open this particular image in Discord, right? Can you still see it? Yeah. So the image is one of these, and you can see it, or some version of it here. And again, is one of these things where, look, the issue is the use of AI to create, or the use of AI to think, or the use of AI as a search tool, whatever we want to call it. For me specifically in architecture, it's quite interesting because I'm looking for certain things. And I think this particular model is part of a series where I was trying to play around with prompts based on was J.G. Ballard's Drowned Earth. I think that's what that series is for. Obviously, you can't ask Midjourney to create a building based on J.G. Ballard. So what you need to do is you have to enter a series of keywords, you know, from your understanding of the story, or from your understanding of the scene in the story which you're looking for, and then the computer uses that, or the algorithm tries to stitch something together, and then it creates a series of things. So if I go back to this is a very interesting one because it says the cyberpunk Nagakin Tower. The Nagakin Tower has nothing to do, this has no resemblance to the Nagakin Tower. The Nagakin Tower was demolished, I think, 2 years ago, and it's a sort of cellular type building. I'll type it in the chat for anybody who's interested in searching for it. Nagakin. So what I think the algorithm did was it registered tower. All right, it registered tower, it registered cyberpunk, it registered a couple of things. So Nagakin Tower on a Drowned Earth, this is reference to Ballard, in the industrial architectural style of Cedric Price and Morphosis. Again, I don't think it has any recognition of who these individuals are. So I think what the algorithm does is it does its best to try and find something, and I'll just show you. So this, if I click on here, it'll take you to one of the earlier iterations, another iteration. In this particular case, for whatever reason, I don't remember why it was in Timber, but it's one of the series that was produced. And I think, again, these are quite interesting. I was modifying what the search would be and asking it to do things like add insects and whatever, essentially to create a realistic scene of a swamp. So you have to do all of those things to get any kind of meaningful imagery. So if we keep going back, this is now 8th of March 2024, and it goes on, and this is 19th of August 2023. So in a way, we can see that all of these images, or all of this production, has a life. And what is quite interesting about the format, where I suppose where Discord in particular is quite handy, is that they stay there. So if I invited anybody to join this investigation, for example, they would then be part of the, it would then register also on their own Discord. So I suppose, in summary, I find the website, or the web format, quite interesting as an investigative tool, but also as something of a diary. And for me, where it started from was, as a tool for teaching during lockdown, because students could literally, I don't remember now. I suppose maybe I'll do a search for the actual site, so that during the Q&A I can show you what happened there. But I think if I just quickly go on to another, so this is, I'll show you. I don't know if you guys use blogs at all for teaching. So one was performance drawing.wordpress. There we go. So this was again, this is where it's used as a teaching platform, where the instructions were placed here, and the original. And I think this was really useful because the first time this workshop was delivered to students in Edinburgh. And the second time it was delivered in 2022, it was delivered in Newcastle. And obviously, quite a few things would have changed. So, so there's some, hang on, performance materials. I think I may have taken away something. So we asked that where to get materials from. There's something which has been removed from here, which was the site, I think. The exploratory site, timetabling. Oh yeah, here we go. So what this was useful for was students could really take this on their phones and just work with it. So the link would have been put on their VLE, whether that was in Edinburgh, the VLE was Learn, in Newcastle, the VLE is Canvas. And this would have been put there and then taken off, whenever the project was finished. But because I've authored this, I own the platform, and I can literally edit it, and whoever joins in on the project will be added or removed as the work evolves. In this particular project, so this project was technically co-authored by myself and Sophia Lycouris, and Kieran Connolly, who's a colleague in Newcastle, was part of the delivery of the project. When we did it in Edinburgh, it was just literally me and Sophia Lycouris. So I think that's kind of the talk in a nutshell. And yeah, I suppose I would open myself for questions. Sorry, that was my dog getting excited about the buzzer.
No worries.
Give me a second. Let me just check who's at the door.
That is all right. In the meantime, I'll just moderate the end of this, and then we'll go to Q&A. That's all right. You don't have to be for the moderation. Cool. Thank you very much for being here. I will just say that we will have another talk on December 8th, again at 6 o'clock, again at the same Zoom link, that time by Thomas Carson, who will be talking to us on the essay. We would be very happy for you to join us there when it comes to this. I will shut off the recording now, and we will turn to the Q&A. And feel free to post questions either in the chat or just sign your interest through the devices. Tolu, thank you very much for this.